Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So in this video we are asking the question of why jailbreak a PS4 in 2019, what are the pitfalls and what are the benefits of jailbreaking the PS4. Now I did make a similar video to this last year, but I feel that it's time for an update now because there has been a few developments since my last video on this, which was over, 12 or 13 months ago. So firstly, I am going to be referring to this exploit as a jailbreak, as the official definition of the term jailbreak on Google states that to jailbreak is to modify a smartphone or other electronic device to remove restrictions imposed by the manufacturer or operator. So I think that's a pretty accurate description of the PS4 exploit. So in order for your PS4 to be jailbroken, it needs to be on an exploitable firmware version or system software version. So currently there are exploits for firmware versions 1.76, 4.05, 4.55 and 4.74 and 5.05 to 5.07. 5.07 is kind of an obscure patch that only some PS4s got, most PS4s didn't. I mean 5.05/5.07 can be jailbroken as well. So if your PS4 has been updated past 5.05 or 5.07, then you cannot jailbreak the PS4, nor can you downgrade your firmware back down to 5.05 after you've updated. Even factory resetting the PS4 or changing the hard drive will not allow you to downgrade your firmware version. However, if you're on a PS4 that's on a lower firmware than 5.05, you can update the firmware version to 5.05 in order to do the jailbreak. You can update using a USB stick. So first thing to note about the PS4 jailbreak is that it's what's known as a tethered exploit, which means that the process done to jailbreak the device is only temporary, and the console will no longer be jailbroken after the console has been rebooted. So every time you start up the console, you will have to re-enable the exploit. Now the exploit itself is a kernel exploit that can be executed through the PS4's web browser. And despite this, you can run the exploit offline, as the web page can be cached in the browser for offline use. So you do not have to be connected to the internet to use it, or you can host the exploit on a local server as well. So the exploit only takes about 5 seconds to enable, so even though you have to enable it every time you start up the console, it only takes about 5 seconds to actually get it up and running. So there are many different payloads that use the exploit to do different things, but the main exploit is known as HEN, which is Homebrew Enabler. So running this payload will allow the console to do two primary things. One is that it allows the PS4 to install and run fake package files. So all your PS4 games, your apps, your DLC, your updates, they all come in package files. So official package files from Sony are known as retail package files in the community, and they can be installed and run on the PS4. But fake package files, which are homemade package files, you can generate them yourself with a program on the computer. They normally cannot run or be installed on the PS4. You need to run the HEN payload in order to install and run them. So HEN also enables the debug settings, that's the other big thing it does, which is an extra option in the settings menu that has a package installer that allows you to install both retail and fake package files from a USB drive. So that's kind of the primary thing that HEN does. It opens up a backdoor for being able to install third-party apps onto the PS4. So some of the apps you can install, obviously games, demos, DLC, updates, but also PS2 games, as the PlayStation 4 does have PlayStation 2 emulation built into the system. Now Sony, for whatever reason, they never decided to use it, but it is there and it can easily be accessed on the PS4 if you have HEN running, of course. And thanks to the PS2's emulation, there are other emulators that you can run on the PS4 as well, like Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, NES, SNES, Game Boy, Dreamcast, and more games can all be run on the PS4 through separate emulators. These separate emulators, like SNES Station, for example, which is an SNES emulator that's actually made for the PS2, but can then be run on the PS4 with the PS2's emulation. So it's kind of like an emulator within an emulator, so emulatorception. But they do actually run pretty well despite this. And there's also homebrew apps as well, which are third-party apps made by independent developers, like the PS4 Explorer app, which is a file manager for the PS4. There's also the Homebrew Store, which is a free app store that allows you to download third-party apps directly to the PS4. There's the Remote Package Installer, that allows you to install package files you download on your computer directly to the PS4 over your network connection, so you don't have to install them with a USB with the debug settings, which is pretty handy. And there's a bunch of other homebrew apps as well. That's just some, 3 particularly useful ones right there. Finally, you have game mods as well. So you can mod and replace files in a game using a modded update package file to patch the game with. There are developer menus for the Dead Island series and Dying Light. You can also install PC mods for games like Skyrim Special Edition and Fallout 4. So the same PC mods that you download from, Nexus mods for the PC version of the game can be installed and run on the PS4 version via a modded patch. So that's pretty useful as well. There are of course other ways to mod your games. There are mod payloads in the web browser to enable debug menus for The Last of Us and Uncharted series, plus mod menu payloads for the Call of Duty games and GTA 5. These mod menus can be just as big as the menus for Jailbroken PS3s and Xbox 360s. So quite a lot of stuff you can do there. There's also trainers like the PS4 web trainer that have cheats for a large variety of different games. The trainer can be accessed through a web browser on the PS4 or PC, phone or tablet as long as it's connected to the same network. You just enter the PS4's IP address, click connect, and then select the game that you're playing, enable whatever cheats you want. You'll typically find cheats like unlimited ammo, God mode, infinite money, that kind of stuff, but obviously there's different cheats for different games. And for games that don't have cheats, you can actually find and make your own cheats with tools like PS4 Cheater, which is like a cheat engine type app that allows you to search through the game's memory and edit and freeze values in real time. There are other payloads, of course, like the FTP payload that allow you to remotely access the file system of the PS4 over your network. There's the dumper payload that allows you to dump and decrypt your PS4 disc games so that you can turn them into a fake package file and run the game without the disc. There's save mounters, so you can swap saves between different jailbroken PS4s. Fan speed control the temperature of your PS4. Update blockers, and many other payloads as well. Another big payload you can access is the Linux loader. This allows you to run Linux operating systems on the PS4. There's already a dedicated distro of Arch Linux designed for the PS4 called PSX IT Arch Linux version 2. Not entirely sure what the proper pronunciation of that is, but it is a full Linux distro and it has built-in driver support for the PS4's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's got OpenGL support for the PS4's Jaguar GPU and controller support, so you can use the touchpad of your PS4 controller as a mouse, and of course you can use it to play games as well. The distro also has Steam built in. It's got Steam Native and Steam Runtime built in, along with a bunch of emulators like PCSX for running PS1 games. So not only can you run PS2 games with a built-in emulation to the PS4, but you can run PS1 games on the Linux distro on PS4 as well for double backwards compatibility. Then you've got Muppin64 for running Nintendo 64 games, Dolphin Emulator for running GameCube and Wii games, and RetroArch for running all other games in between. Now with Steam, you are currently limited to only running games that have OpenGL or Vulkan support, so DirectX support is non-existent, unfortunately, but you're not limited to only running PC games that support Linux. You can also run PC games made for Windows only through Proton, which is Steam's kind of version of Wine that allows you to emulate PC games on Linux, so that is possible too. Of course, it's a fully functioning Linux distro, so you can also install other programs like Kodi to use it for media streaming or install other emulators. It has Firefox built in as well, so you can use it to browse the web with a proper web browser. And it's also important to note that the Linux operating system is installed alongside the PS4's operating system. It doesn't overwrite the PS4's operating system. You'll still turn the console on, it'll still boot into the normal operating system, but if you want to go on Linux, you just run the payload, wait 10 seconds, and you're on Linux. If you want to go back to the PS4's operating system, you just hit the little mushroom start menu and select the reboot to Orbis OS option, and it'll reboot you back to the PS4's operating system again. And it's installed, Linux is installed on a separate drive, connected via USB like an external hard drive or SSD, so it doesn't affect any of the files on the PS4's hard drive either. So yeah, you don't have to really worry about that. Think of it kind of like a dual boot is kind of what it's like. So those are the main benefits of jailbreaking a PS4, so let's talk about some of the pitfalls, and unfortunately there are some big ones here, which is why a lot of people who have a jailbroken PS4 also have another PS4 that isn't jailbroken, so there's pretty big reason for that. So the two major disadvantages of jailbreaking the PS4, the first being that since you are required to be on an older firmware, 5.05 as of right now, you cannot connect to PSN to play online. Now this can be mitigated somewhat since you still have internet access on a jailbroken PS4, so you can still access the web browser. There are payloads that will allow you to use things like remote play. There's non-PSN apps for media streaming apps like Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, YouTube and more. By non-PSN apps I mean the app has been modified to remove the PSN authentication, allowing the app to be used without signing into PSN. You will still need a Prime account to use Prime, a Netflix account to use Netflix, and so on, but you can access the app on 5.05 without signing into PSN. You can even play online through the use of third-party online services like XBS Link and Xlink Kai, which are similar to Tungle for the PC. It allows you to use the LAN connection in your games to play online. You can even connect to people with consoles that are on higher firmwares, so long as the game versions are the same. And you can play online through Steam as well on Linux. So there are different ways of playing online, but obviously they're not as convenient as PSN. And being console banned is something that people worry about, but it's actually a non-issue here because you can't connect to PSN anyway on the jailbreakable firmware, so you won't be banned. And if you do update to the latest firmware, then you can't do the jailbreak anymore, so again you won't be banned. So being console banned really isn't an issue with this jailbreak. But the other big downside is that on 5.05 you cannot run new games. So every PS4 game requires you to be on a certain firmware version in order to run the game. So newer games like say Days Gone for example require you to be on a much higher firmware version than 5.05. I think 6.21 or 6.51 for Days Gone. And if you update the console to that higher firmware version to play that game, you can no longer use any of the payloads like the HEN payload to jailbreak the system. So the most recent game that you can actually play on 5.05 right now is probably God of War. Maybe a couple new games that came out just after that, but that's about it. Any game released before May 2018 will be fine, but any game released after that point you probably won't be able to run on a jailbroken PS4. And of course that could all change even when a new exploit is released for a higher firmware version. And we know that there is a newer exploit that has not yet been publicly released, but nobody actually knows if and when it will ever get released. So it could be released tomorrow and then you can have your cake and eat it. You'll have a jailbroken PS4 and be able to run the latest games, but you know, it could take years before another exploit comes out for that firmware version. So nobody really knows at this point. Well, apart from the people who actually have it. But yeah, anyway, so that is basically it. That is the pitfalls and the benefits of jailbreaking a PS4. I hope you guys enjoyed the video or found the information useful. And I do have tutorials covering pretty much everything I've mentioned here, how to jailbreak the PS4, and basically everything I mentioned in this video I've got a tutorial for. Even how to buy a PS4 that's going to be on an older firmware so that you can jailbreak it. I have a buyer's guide for that as well. So I'll link those videos in the cards in the top right hand corner and in the video description. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.